Okay, on the agenda, item number 2, recognizing the guest visiting officials. There's a lot of you here, voters, media, so also candidate Chris Deschene. Let's go to number 3, review, adopt the agenda. Staff.
Agenda of the Navajo Board of Election Supervisors, regular meeting, location, quality, and room 107, Window Rock, Arizona, date Monday, October 15, 2014, time 9 a.m., 1, call meeting to order, roll call invocation, 2, recognize guest and visiting officials, 3, review and adopt the agenda, 4, report 2014 general election. Yvonne Henry, Chief Legislative Counsel, Legislative Counsel, Office of Legislative Counsel. 5, resolution. This resolution was considered by the board to fail, so it's not to be considered again, but it'll be up to the board if they want to pick it up again. Other one, the 6, close of session, announcement, adjournment.
Okay, who is the sponsor of the resolution? Put in this resolution on the agenda as this things are. I don't really nothing much. I don't think the board has ever said that we're going to postpone the election. So, issue by the commission, we'll discuss that. I need a motion to adopt the agenda. Motion. Supervisor Kuhn. Supervisor Watson. Second. Any questions, comments? Let the record show that we have Jonathan Schoen here for the meeting. You'll probably get his $60. Okay, there's a motion, there's a second, so that to adopt the agenda. Any questions, comments? If not, let's go ahead and vote to adopt the agenda. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 in favor, 0 opposed, 0 abstention. Okay, we have an agenda, so let's go to item number 4, report 2014 election, general election. For the general public, we have 2 staff from Legislative Council and a representative from the Department of Justice. 8 years of that. So at this time, Yvonne Henry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and supervisors. As you mentioned, Mr. Ron Haven is here from my office, and also Mr. Paul Spruan from the Department of Justice. As had been mentioned last week, we were waiting for the final written order from the Office of Hearings and Appeals, and that came out late Friday. And so I believe everyone has a copy of that and has read the final order, and maybe perhaps have heard a lot of explanations about what this final order means over the weekend. The conclusion that the Office of Hearing and Appeals came to on the very last page, saying that the respondent, Mr. Deschene, is hereby disqualified from the election. It also says that OHA expects the Navajo Election Administration to follow Section 44 by automatically placing the candidate who received the next highest votes in the primary election preceding the general election as a new candidate on the official ballot in the general election. The purpose right now, and looking at this, there's that final line in there that says that all parties have 10 days to appeal. And so we're in the middle of that appeal period right now. And so that's where things stand. As we had mentioned last week, that the Office of Hearing and Appeals came to this conclusion by what they call a default judgment, meaning that one of the parties, Mr. Deschene, did not respond to the questions, and as you read in the decision, that the hearing officer said that he had no choice but to enter a default judgment. I'm not exactly sure, and haven't really talked to anyone about what the appeal may be, if there will be one. But we anticipate that sometime either late this week or early next week. If I could, Mr. Chair, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Spruan for his comments on the matter also.
Yeah, before we do that, the 10th day would fall on October 27th, right? Are we counting the weekends? It'll be the 27th.
27th? It would be the 20th, sir.
20th, okay.
Yes, next week, Monday.
Okay. Go ahead.
Thank you. Dineh to everybody here in the audience, honorable members of the board, Mr. Deschene. As you know, my name is Paul Spruan, Assistant Attorney General from the Department of Justice, on behalf of the Department of Justice and the Legislative Council. I don't have all that much to add to Mr. Henry's analysis. We've heard various things in the press and otherwise as to intentions of the party involved. There's a possibility of a motion for reconsideration, as I hear, which would be directly to the Office of Hearings and Appeals to ask them to reconsider their decision. There's also appeal time. How those two intersect is something that will be up to Mr. Deschine's group to decide if they both do a motion for reconsideration and an appeal. But whatever they end up doing, there is a 10-day period from last Thursday where we do not know if this is going to go to the Supreme Court or not. If it does, there's the theoretical possibility that the Supreme Court will think again of its decision and reverse it. They always have that authority or not. So that's where we are, where we don't have a definitive decision yet from the Supreme Court. And so it's really up to Mr. Deschene and his attorneys to decide whether they're going to pursue this further to the Supreme Court or not, but they do have that time period to decide. And so that's my general view. I think Mr. Henry accurately described the substance of the Office of Hearing Appeals decision as a default for what it perceived to be Mr. Deschine's non-participation in the process. And so it is what it is. He's disqualified according to OHA. There is that sentence in there which uses the word expects that the election administration will follow section 44 of the code, which does say that automatically, I believe the term is used, the next highest candidate should be put on the ballot. How the Board of Election Supervisors deals with that and the election administration is, of course, up to this board. Thank you.
Members, you have any questions? Supervisor Brown.
Chair, the board one has a somewhat, a copy of the order. There's some error in there, but I don't want to talk about that. But what you said here is that no true word for go on with this one here from this sheet. So when he's say he's done, and then I guess we can talk about it. Otherwise, if we talk about, say, well, let's jump and get in the wagon with those guys, and then if it goes to higher court, and if the higher court to turn, then we all both would be monkey. So we need to be very, very careful on this thing here. Is it going to be appeal or is it going to be none? You see, the court already tell us what to do, but again, they gave him 10 days. The only thing is I sort of disagree with is that you put the weekend in there. That is, to me, is wrong. The working on Monday, it should be in there. I don't know, to me, that's wrong because United States down to here is weekend, Saturday and Sundays hours. So So nobody should tell us that we're gonna count with that one here and hurry up. So again, he did band that off in, he did Mr. Deschene, no, I was this critical. About even the end, he either, could you not, I was kidding. So she Chris Deschene. That's it. Anything. I have another son of the king, could all at the end of it in Donny. Evan, Oban, Jessica, shit. Go with Ada. He's not in of arguably journey and he gives no one uncle Harnett shit on it. Sure, Crepaski. There's nice car on the wash it. Nero that up and chunk, they need that. For share your bandage in all the corridor. Go by your own needle, children here. Yeah, but I will get in net. Is very good. I see past here. So I'm on the water. I see another way in either. When here, we're not in Japan. As far as I'm concerned, elections will go on. And that's it. I didn't so PD Lajo, we just have to wait it out. I didn't want, I think, so there is other things, but I don't know if that is the right to put it in here or not. That's what council has done way back when this thing happened, and the other things. Issuing attorney does it, figure out of course, that's a good job, which one's unsure, put that in the good job, which one's under the hard thing, I would have to, that is, the one is not. Yeah, they be has on in any, not well say the egg it is. Then it that's in a way from Ponte on our I didn't Charlie the lead or the Indian
Order.
Yeah, go ahead.
This is just pertaining to the 2014 general election report. I think Mr. Brown is getting off the subject.
Yeah, okay.
Mr. Brown? Okay. For the general public, let me give you information that this body, the election supervisor, has been very adamant sticking to the election law. Election law wouldn't that for the past several weeks, there were two recommendations that not only have to extend the election, but the election law. November 4th, they rejected those two recommendations of that. I said, that is the league. Jonathan, so let me go to Paul. I think there's a question about the wickets.
Right, yeah, I just wanted to comment on that. If you go to section 341 of the election code, which is the section where this whole case was taking place, it says 10 days. It does not say calendar days. It does not say working days. Working days wouldn't include the weekends. Calendar days would. Generally speaking, the Supreme Court, in my experience, follows calendar days. So if it's 30 days, it's 30 calendar days. It is up to Mr. Deschene and his attorneys, of course, to decide whether they want to count it as working days or they want to count it as calendar days. If they decide it's working days, but the Supreme Court disagrees, there's a question about whether it will be dismissed for being out of time. The Supreme Court takes the timing for appeals very seriously. They considered it a jurisdictional issue. And if you do not file within the appropriate time as they see it, and of course the code doesn't tell you one way or the other, but as they see it, they could dismiss it outright as being out of time as a matter of jurisdiction. So it's really up to Mr. Deschene and his team in consultation with the Supreme Court, but I will agree, it does not say definitively in the code if it is working days or calendar days. So that is something that they will have to consider if they are considering filing an appeal.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor, sir?
Mr. Chair, the board members, the staff, and the legislative council, the guests. I just want to put on record that the election is still ongoing. We're in the middle of an election. This is the process that the people use to choose and elect the leader of their choice. The election has always been in our hands. The ball has always been in our court. We were never named in that suit. Therefore, we're not a part of that outside of the board. The election goes on. I don't care the order needs to be enough. The election, Board of Election Supervisors will recognize the right of the people to choose their leaders. And this particular resolution keeps coming up on our agenda about postponing the election. The election board recognizes the laws and the rights of the men. There are traditional, Navajo traditional law. There's Navajo common law, fundamental law, Navajo Bill of Rights, Indian Civil Rights Act, the Nebabez Anita, Dalgel Nazne. Those are what guides the election supervisors. In those laws that I mentioned, the people have that right to choose their leaders of their choice. And the office of the president in this case that's in question belongs to the voting public. Although the people, the Navajo, they have a right to participate in the political process. That's their liberty right. We recognize that the rights, equality will be equal rights, equal protection, equal application of law. These are our guiding principles from the board standpoint. This process of electing leaders didn't come about overnight. This is not something that's being used for the first time. This is something that was used 20, 30, 40 years. This is how the people elect their leaders. That's the nature of the game. You win, you lose. That's part of this game. The bashed as the Zagoshi, this is politics. If you look back 4 years ago, 8 years ago, during those elections, there are issues that came out. One issue that came out 4 years ago and 8 years ago was that was the Who decided that issue? the people. They decided that issue. I don't see anything different than what's going on out there in Navajo and Navajo. You know, we're not part of it. We're not naming the suit. So for somebody to say the election bond that it never left us. Because we honor the people's vote. We stand for the people. When I took the oath of office, I took my oath very seriously, simply because I took that oath not only because I took it in front of my constituents, but because I took it in front of the Almighty God. So help me God, Dineh Benally, the Yod the Data the Nasha is Nili the Data the Atcitty, Koto, Ohidnan, Gagi, Nahabesan Zero, the Heat, a night, Aiki, Nahabit Arson Zero, Nahatin Sendo, the Hard the late, the dot Ziggy, and that's what drives me every day. These of postponing. It's not an issue. The people voice and are participating in their election process of selecting their leaders. That's ongoing. Let the people decide. Let the people choose. Let the people finish the process. They took the first step. Now it's the next step, and that's where we're at. The election, the court hearings, so the Rano has to education is the leadership. Bansaskins dollar up the Zadi the Lanson, dollar up so the Zindi the Lanson, these children, these children, it's a kid, oh, you want to be in a car, which big in a catish between Nikat, dollar dot, so the Zindi, Cadeto illegal by a ship. Decoy that there was a deal. Then in Navajo did the Nepans of that. Don't add a near sheep and nether or neither. Did I like to put it on record. Although the report in the motion is there, we have to accept that.
Okay, there's a motion and need a second. Ms. Watson. There's a motion and a second. Mr. Watson, what?
I have a question first before we take the vote, Chair. The question that I have will be, I guess, to any of our attorneys here. Maybe I can ask Mr. Henry. So the report that was given to us is that Mr. Deschene he can appeal, right? To the Supreme Court.
Correct.
Okay, if that's the case, then my understanding is that Tsosie was appointed by Joe Shirley. And if that's the case, if he was appointed by Joe Shirley when Mr. Shirley was president, then I believe there's a conflict of interest right there. Therefore, if that's the case, Mr. Tsosie should recuse himself, from hearing the case, because I see it as a conflict of interest. Anyway, that's.
Okay, there's a question, there's a motion and a second on the floor to accept the report. Members, Dinora.
Thank you, board members. There was a question earlier about this other resolution. It's already taken action, and I wanted to, I sponsored it the last time, but I wanted to.
Can we go to the resolution until after we're done with the report?
That's true, but I want to make a comment on, I'll just answer the question that you had posed. But I wanted to add my comment to this whole situation. I thought about a lot of things. I took the election code, the laws, and I read it through. And in there, it says that the election board has the authority to interpret the election code. And all this fiasco that is occurring, legal proceedings, etc., not one time has anyone approached the board. We represent all 110 chapters. There are 10 members, 2 per agency. And ever since I've been on this board, anytime there's a governmental issue coming up, they never come to the board. That really bothers me. We have this authority. We are independent entities, what we're told, to protect the rights of the people that vote. The way I see it is, we have men and women that have sacrificed, given the ultimate sacrifice of their life so that we can vote. This morning I went upstairs and I voted. I exercised that vote, that right. Because I have a younger brother that went to service and gave his life. That's why I always say things. Sometimes I know board members, you probably want me to kind of cut it and taper it back a little bit, but I speak on his behalf as well as mine. The interpretation of it, when I read this whole thing, the way that I interpret it as a board member, with the authority that's given to me, the qualifications. And I have one area that still bothers me to this day, and that is the Bolton versus Red House case. My case as a citizen trying to address a complaint, but it was dismissed because I was not a candidate. In this case, the way I interpret it is you had the primary election at 7 o'clock. Everybody became citizens except for 2 candidates for the general election, and we know who those candidates are. And they have standing to file a complaint, but they didn't. It was a different party. According to our election code also, is that 5 days after the primary, the candidates select their vice. Their vice and the candidates put on the ballot as one ticket according to the law. Section 43, it says, the president and the vice shall be placed on the general ballot and voted upon as a single ticket. That's what I voted for this morning, whomever I voted for. And so when this complaint was filed, 10 days later, 5 days, it became a ticket. 10 days later, a person filed against the candidate. Same fluency. The board hasn't had an opportunity to interpret what fluency is. I don't think anybody really knows what that interpretation of it is. But that ticket is fluent. The way I see it, you got 2 people being one ticket. There's no question. I think the whole world heard the fluency of Navajo from that ticket. That's my interpretation of it. Laws, no. But this board has that authority. And we represent all 110 chapters. From 45 agencies, there's 2 of us. We represent 27 chapters, the largest amount of people that vote. And we have people coming to us. They have petitions that they bring to us. So we have to listen to the people. The government may establish rules and regulations, but we're bypassed. We also have the peacemaker court. That has not been exercised. I'm one of those prime examples. I spent 18 years of my life since I was 9 years old. I was raised in the Ghana world. When I came back, I couldn't hardly speak Navajo. People can read and write Navajo. That's part of fluency. We know the candidate can do that. They can comprehend. The problem is that's kind of hard. We have thousands of our Navajo kids out there. My children, As much as I try to teach them, I have 6, do not speak fluent Navajo. But I certainly would like them to have an opportunity to work in the government. We have thousands of our Navajo employees in the same situation. But this election, I think it is our responsibility to protect the voting process. It's ongoing right now. I can understand it. I know 2 years ago, the same thing happened with the school board. There was a law that was passed right in the middle of an election. After the election was over, we're told we got to disqualify maybe 20 people that were elected to school board. That did not make sense. It did not sit well with us. At that time, we said, we're not going to do that again. We're going to protect the people's vote and the candidates if they want to run. So I'm using the election code right here. It's in black and white. It's right before me. I interpret it as that ticket has fluency in Navajo. If anybody wants to dispute that, it's there in black and white. And then those candidates that lost in the primary had no standing. That's the law. I'm looking at it. So why are we ignoring that? So that would be my response to it. I'm glad that we get the lawyers to tell us information. I'm glad that we have their recommendation, but we don't have a lawyer. This board does not have a lawyer. And all this time, whenever we have a conflict, we borrow the lawyer or the one that's assigned to us, and Ron is a great attorney. But we don't have our own. And so it's left to this board to exercise this authority, and that's what I'm doing. I'm not listening to any lawyers. I listened to it long enough. But my own interpretation, the way that I'm thinking, the way that my people from my constituents from the 27 chapters have told me, that we need to make sure that their voice is heard through the election process. And all the veterans, we've heard their voice. Why are we ignoring the veterans? I cannot ignore the veterans' voice either. So that's kind of my response to this report. It's good that we get reports, and I'm glad that we have the information. But I think this board has the authority to do and interpret the law according to Title 11. Thank you.
Okay, members, let everybody speak, so we go to Ms. Watson.
Thank you, Presiding Chair, and Vice Chair, Mr. White, and all the Board of Election Supervisors, each and every one of you, that although Attorney General and the Legislative Council and the Department of Justice, thank you, and Mr. Deschene, other states that since it's going to be set in Navajo, but or the Department of Justice is the other nationality is white, so I'll say it in English. The question that I have from the respondent by the disqualified, where it says that on the subsection 44, automatically the third candidate is going to come up to be put on the ballot. I have a question. Below there, all parties have 10 days to appeal this final order to the Navajo Nation Supreme Court. Now, according to this, should we pull up the third as an order, the third candidate? Who has the power to nullify all these people that are far away in uniform, men and women that are serving 24/7, and all the people that are on the Navajo land that have cast their ballot? Who has that authority and who has that power to do that for us today? I have that question. Right now, I cannot find anybody that could do, but as where I stand, just like everybody else said, I'm standing up for my constituent. I stand on the voice of the voters. So I want to see as the election ongoing as it is. Thank you.
Okay, let me go back. Legislative Council, there was a question from Supervisor. Can you respond to Chief Justice Navy and the conflict of interest?
Mr. Chair and Supervisors, in response to Mr. White's question about the disqualification, that would be an issue that the parties should bring up if they're going to make that appeal, because they're the ones who have that, are going to appear before the court. And so that it would be up to them whether or not they're gonna make that application to the court on recusing the Chief Justice. Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. DOJ, Supervisor Watson has a question also.
It's a,
Who is the individual that will be, have that authority to inform all those individuals, especially military, that the possibility that their vote will not be counted if we go that direction?
there's a process that was instigated by several people through the Office of Hearings and Appeals in the Supreme Court. They are making decisions based upon the case that is presented to them. If you believe that they are the final decision makers, then they are the ones who make that decision. But it's not for the Department of Justice or Legislative Council to convince you who the appropriate deciders are. As Ms. Colton has said, we do have statutory authority to interpret the election code. It is then up to this body to decide how you deal with that. That's, I think, the best answer that I can give, because I think it depends on the views of this body as to how they decide to deal with that situation. I will say, Mr. Deschene has the ability to appeal to the Supreme Court in the process that exists at the moment. The Supreme Court, if he does appeal, will make a decision. So that's what I think I can say at this point where we are.
Thank you. Supervisor Begay? Norman?
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, board members, Legislative Council, DOJ, media, the guests, Mr. Deschene. Good morning. When we read a resolution, any resolution, we say that this board has the authority. It does not say it recommends. So this board has the same authority as the Navajo Nation Council. And Mr. Haven, during, as I recall, throughout our work session, he reminds us that once that the Supreme Court indicated that this body is an independent entity, so this board does not bow to the Supreme Court nor the OHA. If you read Title II, it says that the Navajo Nation Council is only the ministerial oversight. So, September 30, this board made a decision, took action, that the election will continue, that nobody they had an opportunity from September 30. If they disagree with this board, they could have put an injunction in it from OHA, Supreme Court, or the general public. Nobody did. And now there's an order here. Personally, I myself, I don't know primary election, they picked Joe Shirley and Chris Deschene. Tied in the AAEA. I'm not about to change that. I would rather face the repercussion of OHA than go against my people. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor White? Good job.
Thank you, Chair, and also the Board of Supervisors. I didn't know Yagi, as well as Mr. Deschene. Thank you for coming over. I'd like to echo what my colleague has said. The election board, we represent the Navajo Nation. We represent the people. Each one of us in this room, was elected by our people. Myself and Ms. Fulton, we represent the Fort Defiance agency. And earlier, before the meeting started, we have a Fort Defiance chapter resolution. What's a Tsosie? Basically, it represents the Fort Defiance agency. And we have quite a few chapters in the Fort Defiance agency. We have all the petitions that is attached to the resolution. And yet, we're being told by the Office of Hearing Appeals, telling us, to select, have the next person, the third, call Iyagi, and to disqualify Mr. Deschene. I, for myself, cannot do that. I cannot do that. I have to listen to the people that voted me into this office. Because the Nagi, the Supreme Court, the Office of Hearing Appeals, that's only one person. And one person is going to tell us to disqualify? I don't think so. I have to listen to the hundreds, to thousands of voters who don't primary election ballots. That we, the election board, we have to listen to the people. We represent the people. And I cannot go against the people. I'm sorry. With that, I'm going to stay with the decision that was made a few weeks ago. And even the resolution that's coming before us. I think I'm the one that made the motion that the election continue as is with the top two candidates. That it continue. And that's the directive we gave to Mr. Wanika and the election staff. And we're going to, I'm pretty sure that this board is going to stand with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Cole?
Board chair, vice chair, Ado kwa tani klinigi night ne jepa bata na hat klinigi dan tsade ya not anish chin khada sto da ade pas na de kha sheti we pa aja kha zo not anish chin ade banasha do friend george di ade panit ash ado kodo kharchen khanda shigi night je administration shinai Mr. Wanika, Aja, Dai, Ishigi, Chinant, Kahan, on Handas, and Shin, Donald Anish Chino, Dai, Mr. Kubush, Shlau, Nahas, Ado, doesn't wait on Shigi, as I, Yeda and Nihigi, Mr. Hayden, Legislative Counsel, Mr. Henry. Do DOJ then, Ladi Kahin Sarah, Mr. Dan, Mr. Spruan. Those men, Ladi Kahin Sarah, was under Mr. Harrison, Attorney General. Those at Naya, not lie in Hasa or Lina, of course, yeah, you are 8 minutes. Those Shikudo has in Atcitty, the Diego, it is in the Naisna. A cocoa, the quiet, but just got stay, but has only been. That's not the best seeds. In a night, just not so good, that's all done as ungiven, that's so they know a cow in the eatness. Those is good over things to show, though I needed that. Keda, Lana Haida, Ehatalia, Donas, the Dineh Benally, a Steda Yaslako, there's only that the Shahago is the whole East Adalia. A cook at Hansa, the Eho, just Ebenel, Mr. Kahasi, so not I not Senegi. A cook, our Echo, not only Nahatnis, no, the Nenahiti, Shilla Shade, the Neverland, I wish case, no Enahiti. Ako need ik adikti kahit sa kahasi. Ako ko din kaya Navajo Board of Election Supervisor what are these so. Ara ko do ba si nihe nihe khane and da itnes to this. Es na ho ato this. Jo ko sa digi bas honest so ko what statutory authority na hibe at the Hunosnitolis, Vassal Zidolis, Vanasnistolis. The responsibility of protecting the integrity of all Navajo Nation elections. Not Abigito. Night Nespana, Banaholisko, 80, the night Nesiki, Basso Tikitolis. The Zadi, in the 8 Najato, Tajadat. Donald Anik or Nahatniki, but the no sendolis, ne? Ado Ebe, Ediano, Anasendolis, ne? Ado ensuring that such elections are conducted in a fair, impartial manner, ne? Sheban, this case, like Kahasi, case, Egoko, so Nate Gashi, like. Essentially, the Nenigi at all Asco or Ascado she the Nun Hardco she cases Zido this net Edo Webawin either do this net though Idia at neither do this a stop net a coagi is Ergo in here in Anish Nahas Sinche Kahasi Aqua and the deal with a sunny cup. She by la door listen the best. Anika a conde by Yatki Oba when even a like a horse don't see that. A cook she in single a yard not it not wishing. Put our shut down Nenegi a shit at a by Yatki later. A codine quit she a not so better now the I could only start over. You can understand, yeah. Kada Honilna Sadadi, no 80, Netty Hasha, Sa could it other not just what Egos a Nisto list that the Nesta, just a 0 a Winson. Ato ye Aho Zinta, and Nicodotunata. Here in an appeal, they no, Anna is none dot cast. At Ebawint, oh, not ne. Put at the art as Kahasi. She got a what Awan Ban's kiss. Okoko, evening na high shanty, Netigi. Na Kio idiot nestadi ne. Things it's also Divoni, your Katigi, a side your nest. Dido Basa, the hot not face bars, another Board of Election Supervisor, Nana to referendum sa the question asan da tleka ta host so referendum da yoki e pa that yo e di ki it's a dolis that is na Nana khai dan da e the nap a sa la stay that the note ta ki e chen do na so tsosa ba ozen go to na hot e go ba ozen go e adin da khai da na ge na khedo khai ki it's so at sabiyaj that the khaishin is the leader that the nota bandit in shas bahasi hot arle yat e ko eti at ende ne at is asta nenigi at that yonnes a hot arle bonet zansen shas bahasi kon de saena de ne kodoni hada isti behas ani no it's also dio your kato tadawne bensi zadane Dola hot Edansen, Shetland Bashe. Dola Ahos in the Atida Tahadeshadot at Ahosinta at Otsko. Novego, Adamin, and not at Otsko Eda Hosinta. Of course, been new national that Jim Nito is Onsen Shetkahasin. Hot Ashe, hot A. Shebansis, hot A. Bassazin, Dolishan, I. Of course, even in Nago, Basit hit ne ashini basit yo ajugo as kendi khasar khasin kon den lat sabe da na dit ai ba hozizo what behasti dolis ado kodo OHA do ne expects the Navajo Election Administration to follow ne kodin don't need a position echo that se kodin not ne Sadi expects ne 80 dollars and that stop. I don't need it a deal but that name to a better simple. Anna can learn no hatchako, Anna knows me, Keko, how zero to the 8 expects ne. Put our deal non screening. Ninch ne, that's it. Oh, that's a side, oh yeah. Quite just none I could I by has still don't cash and I.
Okay, thank you. It's coming from the all members. So what's it? So the Board of Election members, whom is only the that's the thing we've been following up to this point. It has only, we try to protect, try to honor it, implementing it, enforcing it. That's all we've been doing. And if the other people, the other court, if they could have done that, we won't have this problem. The area that I have problem with is the election law says when a candidate files certified, then the other candidate has 10 days to challenge, to question another candidate. My question was, where were those two? And following that, putting a complaint in after the primary, that's not part of the law the way I read it. A private citizen cannot challenge a candidate. Why did the other side interpret that for us? A quaggy we have problems with. Tsosie is uninito and Supreme Court says there's going to be a test. Is that part of the law? No, he does not mention anywhere. There's going to be a test. O pitaji nito, kate honeta kitchen, AI niti board of election. Where in the bears ani would not. Supreme Court, you told us several years ago, you're an independent body. We're going to use that. So no, if we can postpone the election, from both camps. They're probably out of money also. And yes, if we can go that route. This body has authority to extend the election law 60 days. That will be around Christmas time. If those that are in favor of postponing, tell me, who's going to pick up these elderlies during cold winter time and take them to the holding place? Koda dasti. Nihiti behaz ani, bajai ni, ashi ni nesanta adni. Behaz ani pitacho ito ben kayentan na, anta sisiho tela. Here, when it comes to seeing, you know, this document tells you a lot. One agency. It's a petition. This tells you a lot. For those that need of respect the voters, honor those voters. Dineh. Even Supreme Court says one time, Navajo people has that authority. It wants to choose who their leaders are. Chijini that. You know, that means a lot also to veterans. The freedom. People vote the way they want to. But also which are not staying. I'm a Vietnam veteran. Very seldom do I say I'm a veteran. I have a son who went to Afghanistan. Now he's going through a lot of hard times. Just and lost. Then I have a youngest son who doesn't talk Navajo or emotion. But let me tell you, he follows the medicine man. 2 medicines that he follows. Bijigo, Kati'a. Jesus and Kati'a. So, a lot of them, they can't speak Navajo, but they very can sing beautiful Kichin songs. But I'll let everybody talk. I think the only appropriate, I'll say my piece also. Kadeya ni Dadosa, Hashidne, the link is Supreme Court, not Tsosie job either. Hashim Tepa, Jonathan.
Mr. Chair, board members, all staff, all legislative council, and Mr. Attorney General. Navajos in this election, this process, they are not and I can't reiterate that enough, that this is not about any candidate. This is the process that people use to choose their leaders. yes, we all express our opinions, our concerns. Some of us went as far as going to the issue, but I refuse to, me personally, I refuse to acknowledge the fiasco that's going on. This is a process, and we're in the middle of the process that the people have used to choose their leaders. That's bottom line, that's what it's all about. You got to look at the broader picture, the bigger picture, which is the people choosing their leaders. That's what the whole thing is about. It's not about a particular candidate. It's a process we initiate it, and I myself refuse to give the Supreme Court, OHA, or any one of those attorneys involved, I refuse to give them or acknowledge them that they took part of my election process away. I refuse to do that. For me, the election code prescribes how we should conduct elections. We kicked it off, and we're in the middle of it. I refuse to acknowledge that somebody took it away from us, and that whoever that is has that. I refuse to acknowledge that. We never let it go. We never let it out of our hands. That, if you look at the decisions of the board, that's why we have this election still going on. It's by law that these timelines are in place. By law, it gives us specific dates when to have these elections. So I refuse to acknowledge anybody. This is the right. Justice scale. Yeah, the rights we recognize. When you look at it, when you look at the fiasco that's going on and how many people that are involved, if you were to put them on the justice scale, the people that are in the process, common sense, in this case, it's the people. That's common sense, and I think that's what people are beginning to lack. People are getting too narrow-minded, narrow vision. You got to look at the whole picture. And that's how I'm looking at it. So I refuse to get into the specific, to even acknowledge the issue. Times are changing. So I would like to remind the board that we have an election that we're conducting, that we refuse to let the ball out of our hands. We've always been in control, we'll continue to be in control, and we are going to let the people elect whoever they want to elect as their leaders, as their leader. There's one has an land board, election board, president. I can't emphasize that enough. So we'd just like to remind the board, let's keep the broader picture. Let's not get into the specific and make these issues that people want us to make an issue out of. Let's keep that out of it, and the broader responsibility that we have. Let's keep our focus on that. With that, let's accept the report.
Okay, I think there's a motion, right?
Yeah.
Okay, there's a motion to accept the report, the second also. Which Alltså snart när ni fick mycket. And they said they was dödsända efter. That's up to you how you want to do it. There's a motion, there's a second, Dineh.
Thank you. I think we've really explored the situation to greater depths than we've ever had before. And my opinion, I guess everybody has their own opinion, but my opinion is that election board and their decision that they made, at the time I voted against it, and I didn't have a resolution, but I wanted to address the resolution with the comments, but I can do it now, so you don't have to address it later. But it is what I wanted to say because I wanted to look at that option. But looking at the ramification of stopping an election, that's going to impede the right of the people. And that's what I have a problem with. And I have to weigh it. Back in 2000, I was on this board when we had a situation that came up and the council came in and took over the duties. We didn't raise a lot of issues we could have, but that would have brought the people together in a big conflict. To have contention with the voters is something that I didn't want to do at that time. But now it's 10 years later. It's a whole new era. It's a whole new decade. And looking back at that experience, nothing came of it. After 1 year of battling with everybody in the nation, they were trying to toss us in jail for a whole year, and all kinds of stuff went on. And at the time, the election had the hearing capacity. The council took it and put it aside. Now we have one person being a hearing officer. At that time, when we were able to listen to a dispute or a hearing, it was the board's responsibility. You had 10 minds that were able to look at all areas. When you just have one person making a decision for the whole nation, when that responsibility, I believe, belongs to the board, I'd like to see that return to the board to avoid some of these situations. Because we are just an arm's length from the voters. We don't have all kinds of layers. We're directly, a voter can call us, come to us from our area. So I think differently. And my thoughts is along the line of the majority of the board and their vote. And the reason why I changed my mind in that is I read the code once again, and I did see in the section 43, when the candidate selected a vice within 5 days, it becomes a ticket. That ticket meets all the qualifications of the president and the vice. That's my interpretation of it, so I cannot deviate from that. It's the law, it's in black and white, so I feel that my feeling is on line with the way that the code is put in place. We're not deviating from it. And the one thing that always is on my mind is the integrity of all Navajo election. That's our responsibility to maintain the integrity, and the elections are conducted in a fair and impartial manner. People are voting right now. They feel that this election is ongoing, all the candidates, whoever they vote for is on there, they make their choice. Now that right of that voter to select, I think is something that we need to protect. And so I feel that the report is given, but I think that the board, maybe we can vote once more, because I think in the way that the board has selected to vote, that needs to be in place. Come what may, I don't know, are they going to try to throw me in jail again for another year? Well, I will fight like I did the last time, because I'm going to defend the right of the people to vote. Whatever it's going to take, I don't know what's going to happen. But all I know is that my job, that the people voted for me as part of this board, that we're going to protect that vote, that the election needs to take place. Let the people decide. The voice of the people should be supreme. in any election, in any time. This is a whole new era. We need to move forward. We can't just be fighting over here in the corner over election. Election is something sacred. Like I said, I have a younger brother that gave his life. If my younger brother can do that, definitely I can stand on the decision of this board.
Okay, members, there's a report to be accepted. If you want to include the decision of this body that the election goes on as is. There's a motion to accept the report. Supervisor White?
We already, I believe a motion and a second was made to accept the report. And I think, we just need to, I think we should include, I'd like to have the motioning party to include that the general election stay as is with the president election and all the council delegates as well as the other people running for offices to stay as is. To motion party.
The motion party is, who is that? Sept? Huh?
Motion
Motion party?
Jonathan. Supervisor.
Jonathan, so Ruth Watson, Gloria, see again, Ashimata. Jonathan.
I thought the election out there, that way we make a.
Oh, reservation body, okay.
Abigail.
Okay, reporting, Tsosie, yeah. Anything else, comments? Okay, let's go ahead and set the reports, vote. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 in favor, 0 opposing. Okay, let's go to the resolutions.